Today we're going to be taking T-notes on energy, but we're going to now be focusing on potential energy. Now remember, we've already taken notes on this part. We know that the forms of energy can fall under two categories, and the first one was kinetic energy. And this is denoted as Ke, and we know that kinetic energy is the energy of movement. The second form of energy is called potential energy, and this is stored energy. Any energy that is not moving is potential energy. It can also be caused by the position of the object, and we're going to go into more detail today. Chemical energy is a potential energy, and this is where energy is stored in the bonds that hold chemicals together. For example, energy is stored in the food that we eat, the water that we drink, the matches before they make fire. So here are some examples. So this is what I was talking about. Here is a molecule of glucose, and when you break the bonds, then it releases the energy that's inside of it. When you eat the food, whatever the bonds or the compounds that you're eating, such as possibly they have glucose, carbohydrates, those bonds are going to break and they create chemical energy. Same thing here with the piece of coal. When you have the coal, it is sitting there. It has potential to do work. It has potential to be to make energy, but it's just stuck there in that piece of coal until, of course, you burn it, or the oil when you burn it. And of course, here we have an example of a match, and the match head has a few different elements and compounds. So, for example, there's sulfur, there's phosphorus, there's potassium chlorate, ammonium phosphate, and so that is just sitting there until you use it. So therefore, it is chemical, it's potential energy. Of course, when you strike the match, it breaks the bonds and it releases the chemical energy. Elastic energy is also another form of stored energy, or potential energy. This energy is stored as a result of stretching or compressing something. For example, a rubber band has potential energy. It can do work. Bungee cords, trampolines, springs, an arrow drawn into a bow. Here are some examples of what we had mentioned before. So when you pull this back, it has the potential to do work, just as much as this bungee cord over here with this person falling. We also have the bed right here, or mattresses. Whenever you sit down, you have the potential of potential energy of elastic energy. Okay, and then you have your trampoline over here. Gravitational energy is another form of potential energy. This is where energy is caused by the height above the ground. For example, you might have a book on the high part of a shelf, or a person at the top of a slide. Let's talk about this more in detail. Here are some visual examples of gravitational potential energy. When you are biking up a hill, you are moving. Remember that any movement is a form of kinetic energy. However, when you're at the top of the hill and not moving, your energy becomes stored. It is potential energy. Can you make it down to the bottom of the hill? Yes, you can. All you have to do is get to a point where the gravity pulls you, and when it does that, your potential energy is unleashed, it is released, and all of it becomes kinetic energy again. The person on the slide down here is another example of potential energy. When the girl is at the top, the energy is stored. When the girl slides down, the potential energy becomes unlocked. In the top picture, up here, you see a girl holding a ball at some height above the ground. At this moment, the energy is stored until gravity acts on the ball when the girl releases it. When she releases it, gravity pulls on it, and it changes from potential energy to kinetic energy. Nuclear energy is another form of potential energy. This is where energy is stored in the nucleus of an atom. One example, and this is called fusion, and this is where hydrogens join, and there's tons of hydrogens on the sun. These hydrogens join and they produce helium, and they also produce this huge amount of energy called nuclear energy. Another example is a hydrogen bomb. So all they did was take a hydrogen atom and they joined them together. And by doing this, we are pretty much fusing, so it's taking fusion from the sun, but doing it here on Earth, which creates a lot of energy. Fission, on the other hand, is when you take atoms and you split them. So you take one atom and you split it into two atoms, and this releases a lot of nuclear energy. One form of energy that can be kinetic energy, but can also be potential energy, is mechanical energy. Now, with this one, remember we said potential energy is stored energy. So mechanical energy can be potential when it is higher up from the ground. When it is higher up from the ground, it has potential energy, but it can change its potential energy into kinetic energy, and the kinetic energy can go back to being potential energy, and it is this dance between kinetic and potential energy. One example is the bike sitting at the top of a hill. Remember we said that when a bicycle is at the top of the hill, it is potential, but if it goes down the hill, it will change into kinetic energy. For potential energy, here, remember we said it was due to its position. So for example, we had the avalanche. Before the avalanche becomes kinetic, it is potential. So here's a snow mass of where possibly the snow could break off and then become kinetic. Here's a balanced rock where if the rock tilts, it could fall, which then it could become kinetic. But right now, it's potential. Same thing up here with the cars at the top. This is the same as if a person was at the top of a slide. It has potential energy, which could then turn into kinetic. And again, with the book being up on the shelf, it could have potential energy as it rushes down, turning into kinetic. Alongside with this example here of the weightlifter, and he is holding the bars up above his head, and when he drops the bars or when he lowers the bars, there would be energy there. How do you know if an energy is kinetic or potential? Well, some energy forms are only potential, some are kinetic, and some can be both potential and kinetic. For example, we know that with kinetic energy, we have a frog jumping, a person walking. These are movement. This is kinetic energy. For potential energy, we have a car that is parked on a hill, maybe. We have the top of a slide. A person is sitting on the top of a slide. This is another example of potential energy. But if, for example, you have a moving baseball that is kinetic energy, but because it is high above the ground, it also has potential energy because the ball is going to be dropping down due to gravity. So you can have an object that is both kinetic because it's moving, and you can also have it be where it's potential because it is going to be falling down to the ground, which has more energy. Mechanical energy that is both kinetic and potential. Remember that ball that's flying in the air? While it's flying, it has the velocity, just like the dog that's flying in the air, but and then it also has the potential energy because it is experiencing the downward fall. So because it is higher up in elevation, its vertical position is higher, therefore it has potential energy. All right, we have reached the end of our T-notes. Please make sure you have all of your information in your notes and that you understand the T-notes and you are ready to use this information in class.